Revelation chapter 17. We'll look at the first 6 verses tonight. All right, Revelation 17, verse number 1. It says, "And there came one of the 7 angels, which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. And so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, the abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration." All right, what we're going to see over these next 2 chapters is John is going to go into greater detail concerning the eschatological Babylon. Now, of course, Babylon is something that has been referenced throughout the Word of God, but we're talking about the end times system. That's why it references that way, the eschatological Babylon. Now, chapter 17, as we'll see, deals more with the religious side of the system. Chapter 18 deals more with the political side, because when you're talking about the end times Babylon, it's more encompassing than just a political system. It involves the political side, but it also involves the religious side. And so that's really what chapter 17 is dealing with, is the religious aspect or the ecclesiastical aspect, however you want to reference that. Now, the judgment of Babylon, we've already seen this twice. It's already been foretold twice in Revelation, both in chapter 14, verse 8, and what we just saw back in chapter 16. And so this is something that we know is coming as far as its judgment is concerned. But what we're going to see here is more detail on the actual Babylon and a little bit more about its judgment. And so, like I said, Revelation is generally chronological, and then there are kind of these parenthetical sections that give a little more detail or go into more here and there on certain events. And so 17 and 18 are absolutely parenthetical, because 16 chronologically goes directly into chapter 19. We're going to take a little break here in 17 and 18. Now, one of the angels here, we see verse 1, one of the angels that had one of the 7 vials, the 7 final judgments, he comes to John, and he tells him about the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. And so the first thing you want to notice there is Babylon's judgment was never in question. Now, that's important, because as we read there, and at the end of verse 6, John is seeing all this, and then at the end of verse 6, he says, I wondered with great admiration, or literally, I wondered with great wonder. That's really what that means. And so John is seeing these things that are just unbelievable to him, but first and foremost, the judgment has been pronounced, and the judgment is going to take place. Their judgment was never in question. And so again, this angel is going to show him these tremendous things that leave him absolutely astonished. But he leaves no doubt about the overall outcome of what John is about to see. It will be judged. And so Babylon here then, furthermore, verse 1, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon the many waters. And so Babylon here is referred to as the great whore. Now, the Bible is intentional when it does this. It is intentionally using strong language to depict the vileness and the wickedness that is going to be prevalent in this last end times religious system. And so when you read that, if it kind of hits you, I don't like that. It makes me a little uncomfortable. It should. It absolutely should. God is being intentional here with using this very strong language. And as I was putting this lesson together this week, it actually kind of made me laugh a little bit. As I was typing this out on Microsoft Word, I'm typing it out, and I type out the great whore, and it underlines it as if there was some kind of error that was made. And I click on it, and it said, this language might be offensive to the reader. And so the purpose was fulfilled here. This is why God is using this language. It ought to be offensive. We should be offended by what is taking place here. And so God refers to this as this great whore. Now, this is not uncommon. The Bible does this from time to time to depict spiritual immorality, spiritual idolatry, these kind of things. The Bible uses similar terminology, particularly in the Old Testament. I'll give you a couple examples here. In the book of Nahum, Nahum refers to the whoredoms of Nineveh, and it calls Nineveh the well-favored harlot. You can see there in Nahum chapter 3. In Isaiah chapter 23, Isaiah refers to the city of Tyre as a harlot. And I didn't give you a reference on this one, but if you want one, just scratch down to the side Ezekiel chapter 16. Because basically the whole chapter is speaking about this. But in the Old Testament, Israel is often referred to as a harlot in the Old Testament in reference to its constant idolatry and its involvement with other false religions. And so you have this imagery of what essentially what John is portraying here is a prostitute. That's what he's talking about. This woman is portrayed as a prostitute. And so the imagery used in the Old Testament is, Israel, you are prostituting yourself. You should be true to your one true God. And you are to use the terminology that he uses in Ezekiel 16. You're playing the whore. You're playing the harlot. You see that in Ezekiel chapter 16. You should be true to God, and yet you're not being true. You're not being faithful. And so you can understand and see where it's an apt description, especially spiritually speaking. It's an apt description of what happened with Israel and with these other cities. It's an apt description of what's going to take place in the end. And so, again, verse 1, we see here that this great whore sits upon many waters. Now, we don't have to guess about what this means. Verse 15 in the same chapter defines this for us. Chapter 17, verse 15, it says, "And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues." We don't have to guess. We get this defined for us. And so this wasn't just a city. This isn't just Nineveh. This isn't just Tyre. This isn't just the country of Israel. This is a global, worldwide whoredom of religion is what this is going to be. And verse 2 makes this clear. With whom the kings of the earth, and so you have the top end of humanity, if you will. And so the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and then it goes on. And the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk. And so from the top down, everybody is involved in this. This is a global, worldwide, again, to use the word whoredom. And so the nations, verse 2 makes clear, the nations become infatuated with this great whore. And as I was thinking about this, I was coming back to this quote. Perhaps you've heard of this. Karl Marx, I didn't never think I'd quote Karl Marx in a sermon, but Karl Marx once wrote famously, "Religion is the opium of the masses," or sometimes the opium of the people. And so the interesting thing is he's right. He's not wrong. He's right. We know that religion is a man-made phenomenon. That's what religion is. It's man trying to reach out and worship in his own way. Not in the God-ordained way, but in man's own way. That's what religion is. And so when that is done in particular ways, he's right. It is very appealing. And that's the point. That's the point of it all. And so when he says this, he's not wrong. And so this is going to find its apex in the tribulation. They are going to find the most appealing religious system that has ever existed. And that's what it's going to be. And I wanted to bring this up because I thought it was just an interesting, and I won't spend long here, but John MacArthur, he makes a pretty good point here. I'm not going to quote him, but he talks about how it says here, the kings of the earth have committed fornication. It does not use the word adultery. They have committed fornication. When you go to the Old Testament and you read about Israel, Israel commits adultery, spiritual adultery. The kings of the earth are not. They're not committing adultery. They're committing fornication. Why? Because Israel already had a relationship with God. The kings of the earth, they have not. And so it's not adultery, it's fornication. And so there's an interesting distinction being made here between who's God's people and who's not. The kings of the earth, the people, they're mentioned in verse 2, and they never had a relationship with God, and so they're committing fornication, not adultery. But what is happening here is they are trapped in the allure of a religion that appeals to the flesh. I mean, that's what this is going to be. It's a religion that's going to appeal to the flesh. And we see there, they are drunk with the wine for fornication. They've been led in, and now they're intoxicated with it. Now they're not leaving. They're trapped by what is taking place. Now, as I begin to kind of really think about what this might look like, which we're not given those specific of a detail as far as how this is going to function. What's this polity of this religion going to be? We're not given that. But we can, I think, use our imaginations here a little bit, and we can only imagine what kind of religious monstrosity is going to arouse the worldwide interest. And so many people, and I include myself in this group, many people see or think of this end-time religious system as basically a conglomeration of pretty much all the world religions, if not the major ones. And so here's how I see it's going to happen. They're going to go around, and they're just going to take bits and pieces from these different religions and say, well, this is really appealing, and this is really appealing here, and the way that they do this really draws people in. And we're going to take and we're going to put together, and the way that I just kind of just thought about this is a blasphemous tapestry. Right? I think that's an apt term. A blasphemous tapestry that does nothing but pull its victims deeper and deeper into hell. But we know that that's not going to be on the banner, right? Join this religion and you're going to find yourself down. No, they're going to be preaching, well, look at all the moral good we do. Right? Look at all the great things that happen while people are not joining it for the great good. People are joining it because they're being pulled into the debauchery and the religious idolatry and all these things that are going to be taking place. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but the roots of this are already in place. We don't have to look too hard or too far to see that the roots of a giant ecumenical system is here and ready to go. It wouldn't take a tremendous push to have a system like this set up in a very quick amount of time. In fact, probably everybody in here has seen somebody with one of those coexist bumper stickers, it's got all the different religious symbols. That's essentially what this is going to be. And so a lot of people think that really since Roman Catholicism started, a lot of people have seen, well, this is Roman Catholicism. Now, let me explain it this way. I think it would be wrong to see this as only Roman Catholicism. Because as I said, I think it's going to be a joining of a bunch of different stuff. However, and I'm going to say why, I do think the Roman Catholic Church is going to be instrumental in its creation. I think I don't even think it'd be too far to say that whatever this is going to be will be born out of the Roman Catholic Church. Because they make such a huge push already for ecumenicalism. In fact, it is part of their own polity. And I didn't know that, I've heard them talk about it, but I didn't know that it was actually as part of their official church polity until this week. And so I started looking this up. In 1962, Rome held the Second Vatican Council. Out of that council came a number of different documents. But one of them, which is titled, and this is not the actual title is in Latin, but it's titled Declaration on the Relation of the Church to Non-Christian Religions. So right off the bat, we understand this is an ecumenical document. Okay, and so I'm going to give you some quotes. It was obviously too long to put the whole thing up here. But some of the quotes that I found in this particular document. The first one, the church, therefore, exhorts her sons that through dialogue and collaboration with the followers of other religions, carried out with prudence and love, and in witness to the Christian faith and life, they recognize, preserve, and promote the good things, spiritual and moral, as well as the socio-cultural values found among these men. And so look at that. We're going to promote the spiritual and moral qualities of these other religions. That's the first thing that kind of stood out to me. Secondly, they're making a push towards Muslims. It says, since in the course of centuries not a few quarrels and hostilities have arisen between Christians and Muslims, this sacred synod urges all to forget the past and to work sincerely for mutual understanding and to preserve as well as to promote together for the benefit of all mankind social justice and moral welfare as well as peace and freedom. And so there were some other things they said about the Islamic religion, but here you see, let's hold hands with Muslims because it's good for world unity. We're going to promote the benefits of mankind, social justice, moral welfare, exactly what I was talking about earlier, right? We're going to promote that this is going to be for the benefit of mankind. And then lastly, he says this, as the sacred synod searches into the mystery of the church, it remembers the bond that spiritually ties the people of the new covenant to Abraham's stock. Now, the reason why I threw that in there is because I found it interesting that basically what this document is trying to do is to basically combine Christianity, and I say that loosely, but Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, 3 of the top 10 largest religions in the world. The Catholic Church, by their official polity, is saying we need to bring them together. We got to come together. We got to come together to do this. Why? To promote, social justice, moral welfare. That's what we got to do. We need to promote their spiritual and moral good. We got to do this. And so again, the roots of this are in place. That's what I'm trying to get to you. Again, it wouldn't take much, and perhaps a rapture. It wouldn't take much for the world to say, hey, this division that's been going on, it's enough. We got to come together, and something is going to be born out of this to say, well, hey, we've got all the answers. Come join this new whatever it's going to be, this new religion. And so, again, as we have seen throughout this study, the things that are going to be taking place in the tribulation, the foundations are laid. There's nothing that we need to happen in order for everything that we have read to take place, including this great whore that sits on many waters. And so it's all ready to go. God's got this prepared. We don't know when it's going to happen, but what I'm saying is it's ready to happen whenever it does. All right, so let's move on. Verse number 3, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And so John is carried away in the spirit. He sees this vision of a woman sitting on a scarlet-colored beast. Now, by this description, we know that this is the same as the beast described for us in chapter 13. Chapter 13, verse 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon the heads of the names of blasphemy. And so it's essentially the same description here given. So this is the Antichrist. The beast is the Antichrist. This is what this is in reference to. And so what is important about this is that we see is that this woman is separate from the Antichrist. It's not the same thing. It's not the same entity. This woman is separate. And so you see here in verse 3, and it's this interesting illustration, is that she's sitting upon the beast. So the interpretations of this are basically twofold. People aren't I guess you could say, unified in how they see this. Some believe that this means that she's only supported by the beast. She's sitting on him because she needs support from him. And so essentially they say, without the beast, there's no woman. You have to have the Antichrist who gets the influence, and out of that influence comes this system. Others see this as the woman controlling the beast, right? She's directing and she's controlling him like a person sitting on a horse. Yes, they were being supported up, but they're the one controlling what's happening. They control the speed, they control the direction. I think you can see it either way. In fact, I would probably say that it's likely both, at least for a while. And so out of the influence of the Antichrist comes the system, and then the system ends up dominating and controlling the Antichrist for a time. And I'll explain what I mean by that. But for a time. And so I think it's probably both. You don't have one without the other. Both need the other. And again, not for the full 7 years, but at least for the first half. Now, and I'm not going to go into this because we'll see this once we get over to verse 16. But in verse 16, here's what we read. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. And so we see that this system is not going to last. And it's actually killed by those in unity with it. And so whatever the system is, it's not going to last for the entire time. We saw in chapter 13, and here's what I believe is going to take place. We saw in chapter 13 that this system will eventually be done away with, or maybe done away with is not the best way to explain it. Focused down maybe is a better way to say this. As the world is going to switch to worshiping whatever it is worshiping under this system, probably self above all else, but they're going to switch to worshiping whatever it is that's being promoted in the first half to now it's the worship of the beast and his image. All right, we talked about what happens at the midpoint with the supposed death and resurrection of the Antichrist. And it's at that point that the false prophet arises and says, you must worship the beast and his image, you must take his mark. And so at that point, this religion kind of, I can say however you want to say this, it is changed, it is morphed, whatever you want to say, but it goes into what happens at the end of the second half, which is worship of the beast and his image. And so this woman is dressed and is described as dressed in purple and scarlet. She's decked out with ornate jewelry. And all of this, again, leads to the imagery of a prostitute dressing in such a way to allure, in such a way to draw in. She dresses with all the decadence that's going to draw in the world. Again, the roots of this are in place with the prosperity gospel. Right? Come to me, and I will give you all the prosperity you could ever want. And so she's also depicted as holding a golden cup, and this particular cup, which will also draw, This particular cup is full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Again, no doubts as to the guiltiness of this particular woman. And so this cup which intoxicates her victims before pouring out her filthiness. And so that's the imagery that is being used here. John Walvoord said it this way: the Word of God does not spare words in describing the utter filthiness of this adulterous relationship in the sight of God. Few crimes in Scripture are spoken of in more unsparing terms than the crime of spiritual adultery, of which this woman is the epitome. As alliance with the world and showy pomp increase, so spiritual truth and purity decline. Now, I will say again there, it's not spiritual adultery per se, it is spiritual fornication, as that's the term used, and that's really what's happening here. But nevertheless, I agree with his description. Now, on her forehead is this name, verse number 5. On her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, the abominations of the earth. Now, I read a bunch of different commentators who said that it was not uncommon. I couldn't verify this. There's no reason I'm not saying this wholeheartedly. But who said it was not uncommon for prostitutes in Rome to wear some kind of a headband with their name engraved on it. Again, this is perhaps it's true. I don't know for certain. But this is kind of what we see depicted here. And so this title, clearly not the name of the empire. This is not how people in the end times are going to be referring to it. But this is the spiritual representation of what this is, the spiritual representation of the religious side of Babylon. And so this is, what it ends up being, is the final and culminating form of all false religion that has ever existed. All false religion is going to find its culmination in this end times abomination, the very source of the spiritual harlotry and abomination of the day. Again, what's the title? The mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Why are things going to be so wicked, at least in the first half? Well, it's going to be because people are so enthralled and mixed up with this incredibly wicked and evil false religion, which again I think is going to be a conglomeration of all of them that have ever existed, including all the major religions today. And then we see here verse 6, lastly. And I saw a woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And so this woman not only leads people to her cup, as it says there, leads people to her cup, but she also is drunk. She's intoxicating others, but she herself is intoxicated. However, her intoxication is not from alcohol, it's not from the wine of wrath, it's not from any of that, but blood. That's what she's intoxicated with blood. The blood of the saints, as she kills those true witnesses for Jesus. And so, I'll say this. It should come as no shock that false religion will chase, persecute, and kill true believers. This has been the case for almost all of history. Again, it should not shock us that this is going to be done under the banner of religion. It is going to be supposedly the religious that are going to chase and martyr the true witnesses of Christ. Now, right now, as I was looking this up, you can go to a website called Open Doors USA, and there's basically a watch list for countries with what they kind of deem as the highest level of Christian persecution. Okay, and so that's where I got this statistic. But right now, the 10 countries that, according to this website, are facing the most persecution as far as Christians are concerned. Christians in these top 10 countries are facing the highest and harshest persecution in the world. 8 of those countries, they are facing persecutions for religious purposes. Most of them being Muslim countries killing Christians, religious people killing religious people, as it were. And so again, it shouldn't shock us that we see that these martyrs are taking place at the hands of the religious elite. All you got to do is go read the Gospels. I mean, who was it that killed Jesus? It wasn't the people. Who was it that was consorting with the Herodians? It's the religious elite, right? And so this is what has been happening all throughout history. It's going to continue to happen. That kind of thing's not going to stop. And so it is. Now I don't want to really pass over this because I thought this was absolutely amazing that verse 6 ends here. Verse 6. So John is seeing all this, and then it says here, kind of as he pauses, as it were, and he says he's wondered with a great admiration. Again, you could literally translate, I wonder that with great wonder. It's the same word used twice. He's overly wondered here. Now, as I thought about that, I sat there and thought, we're in chapter 17. We have seen and read some absolutely incredible, mind-numbing things. And we don't even have it all. You can go back a few chapters, and John was told, don't tell them about this. And so we don't even know everything that's going to happen. Yet John has seen vision after vision. He's seen incredible thing after incredible thing, and yet here, I have no doubt that John wondered at a few things before. But for whatever reason, here, for the first time in Revelation, it's actually written that he wondered. And so whatever it was that he sees in this end times religious system, this is the thing that really makes him stop and say, this is too much. I can't believe this. I can't believe what my eyes are seeing. And so of all the things that have happened, John now stops and is astonished. It's utterly beyond his comprehension. That ought to give us a clue as to the evil, filth, and wickedness that will utter out from this form of religion. Not to mention the fact that the time that John wrote this was not a time of what we would call a lot of religious purity going on. He's writing this under a height of Rome, and you can go back and you can read, we've talked about in the past, the debauchery of the Roman religious system. John knows about wicked, false religions, but this makes him say, this is so much. I'm amazed right now. And so we don't get all the details. It would probably be too much for us to even handle. And one thing I didn't even mention, we're talking about spiritual idolatry, spiritual fornication, but I have no doubt that it will include a lot of physical debauchery as well. We know that it has been common throughout the centuries to have temple prostitution. That has been a common practice by pagan religions all over the world for probably most of human history. I have no doubt that that's going to come back and it's going to play an important role in all this. And so whatever the case is, it leaves John just in absolute amazement of what he sees. And so when we think of the way religion is used today to do vile and perverse things, and it is used to do vile and perverse things, we need to understand that what we see taking place today is absolutely nothing like what it's going to be. Again, I'll quote Walbert here. He said, the history of the church has demonstrated that apostate Christendom is unsparing in its persecution of those who attempt to maintain a true faith in Jesus Christ. What has been true in the past will be brought to its ultimate in this future time when the martyrs will be beyond number from every kindred, tongue, and nation. And so again, we just can't even imagine how wicked and vile this is going to be. Now, as bad as it will be, this religion, which will, as I said, it is eventually going to kind of morph into the worship of the beast. Whatever it was in the first half, it's going to end up as the worship of the beast in the second half. We read in Revelation chapter 14, verse number 8, and there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Again, how did the angel start this whole thing out? He comes and he tells John, verse number 1, come hither, and I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore. He didn't leave John in any doubt. Yeah, you're going to be amazed at what you see, but don't let there be even a moment of doubt or wonder. Is this going to prevail? This is so powerful. Is this going to prevail? Look at all the Christians that they're going to martyr and kill, and the wickedness and the vileness and how this is going to prevail. Is this going to go on? No, there's no doubt ever left in the mind of John or in the mind of the reader, in the mind of the angels, in the mind of God, that this system will end and it will be judged, and it will be a just judgment because of everything that it's going to be involved with. So again, we see some just terrible things here with regards to how wicked and evil this time is going to be. And again, I take that back to as bad as we might think we have it now. It is nothing compared to where things are headed in the tribulation.